Today is Monday, November the 4th, 2019. Very happy and very pleased to have a returning guest, someone who I haven't spoken with in entirely too long. And it's somebody that I hold in very high regard. I love the way Bill approaches things, and I have an enormous respect for the fact that he is a lover of liberty in ways that most people are not. He has dedicated his life, along with his partner, Chris Powell, in the pursuit of truth and uncovering the criminality going on behind the curtain. And I'm speaking, of course, of Mr. Bill Murphy of GATA, and he also has a website, La Metropole Cafe, where he offers a subscription service for all his great work, and you can get a 1 week free trial over there at La Metropole Cafe. 2 week free trial. So, Bill, welcome back.
Rory, good to see you. Looking good, and thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm glad that you're here, and you are there at the New Orleans Investment Conference, and you and I actually got to meet there a few years ago and shake hands and look each other in the eye and all that good stuff. And how's the conference going so far?
Well, I mean, it's going very well, and especially for GATA, thanks to Chris Marcus, who's given us a lot of visibility, and we really appreciate his effort, and for Brian London for having us back, and me and Chris, because a lot of the other conferences that we used to attend we're persona non grata right now. It's a doggonest thing, but that's the way it is, and we're happy to be here. And I know, congrats to Brian, because I was told that attendance is something like 50% higher than it was a couple of years ago. So it's good for him.
That's great. Yeah, Brian is a super nice guy and very generous with the conference. It's when I was there, it was great. And my wife she just told me, of course, in hindsight, well, we should have went. It's like, well, we only talked about it 6 weeks ago, but never mind that. That's not why I called you, or that's not why we're on the call. And yes, I want to give a shout out to Chris Marcus over at Arcadia Economics for making this possible. It's wonderful. Fine young man. I'm really grateful to be getting to know him. But I really want to ask you, Bill, about what's going on what do you see with these new charges that have come to light over the course of the past couple of months in particular? Are we going to see some changes? I mean, there's been this talk of RICO and JP Morgan being associated with that. Are we going to see some actual changes, maybe some, I don't know, prison time?
It's a doggonest thing, because, who would have ever thought in our history that the Justice Department would call JP Morgan a criminal enterprise?
Yes.
I mean, that is one of the most outrageous things I've ever heard said among the big league financial world. And it's like, huh? And of course, what they've done is they've gone after some of these JP Morgan traders for so-called spoofing, imaginary trades to scare people away, and it's illegal. But that's like the Mickey Mouse first grade stuff compared to the real manipulation that's done by the big banks and the U.S. government itself, the Fed and the Treasury. And so they've got these charges, and they're comparing it to the mafia and this and that, which is true, but it's not for the real reason. And the JP Morgan stock price has gone to an all-time high. I mean, these things come and they go, and nothing's ever made of it. And do I hope something will come out of it? Of course, Chris and I do. But after 20 years, you just look at it. To me, they went after the little guys, and because some of the bureaucrats in the Justice Department saw all this nonsense and said something's got to be done about it. So they went after a couple of little guys, throw them to the wolves, and that's the end of it. I'm afraid. I hope I'm wrong.
I hope you're wrong too, and I think that we could possibly, hopefully, maybe, perhaps see something different, because if they if they do in fact charge some people with RICO, and they get into a discovery phase of that in a court, then there could be some real changes, or there could be some things that come to light that maybe they weren't expecting. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think that it'll get that far.
That's a very good point. And again, I'm hoping you're right. And all of a sudden, a change of pace. And for goodness sakes, J.P. Morgan's got all kinds of skeletons with traders being
Yep.
dying and
Yeah.
disappearing and put into jail. And Blythe Masters, who headed up the commodities unit,
Yeah.
mysteriously left, and then she went to somewhere else, and something happened. Like, there's a lot going on there, and if they really did their job, there's no telling what could come out of it. But look
Right.
at the CFTC. 5
Exactly.
years, the CFTC looked over what the Justice Department said and said, oh, we couldn't find anything wrong.
Right.
And yet the Justice Department calls it a criminal enterprise.
Calls it
Well,
RICO. Right. Calls
Yeah,
it a
I mean,
mafia organization. I mean, this is
exactly.
so we can only hope that it actually. I think that if it actually makes it into a court of law, that we could actually see something materialize. But it's got to get into a court first, and that could be a challenge. As you're probably aware, Harry Markopoulos, he's been trying to hold the State Street Bank and New York Bank Mellon. He's been trying to get them in court since I think 2009, 2010, something like that, whenever he was investigating Bernie Madoff and discovered what they were doing. And he hasn't been able to get them back in court. He got them into court in the state of California. Things blew up, and he's not been able to get them back in the court ever since. But if we can get them into a courtroom, I think that we've got a shot at something happening.
Well, it's a very good point.
So, what do you see? I know there's been a lot of decent action with the metals in spite of in spite of the crimes, and I'm very optimistic about 2020 with silver and gold. I think that both have an opportunity. I think that they're both on the cusp of getting into some free range that we haven't seen in quite some time. And what does your analysis show, Bill, going into year end and the first part of 2020?
Well, I agree with you, Rory. And what we've seen the last few months, and even the last, quite honestly, 2 or 3 days, has been quite different. First of
Yes.
all, gold broke out of in May of a 6-year cage. They finally got going, and then they left silver in the cage, and so the gold silver ratio went up to 96. And then you've had silver break up to 1950, and now it's been in correcting mode, and trying to work its way back up. And then recently, the price action has been totally different than what we saw for not 8 days, 8 months, or 8 years. Is that when they're rating, it's the doggonest thing that the price comes right back.
Yes. Almost
And
instantly.
yeah, and the last 3 days has been remarkable because we've seen what they've done. We know it's the bad guys, as I call them, because the gold open interest is at an all-time high.
Yes.
It's over 680,000 contracts. The silver open interest is way up there, not far from an all-time high, and that represents the seller in the paper market on the COMEX trying to keep the price down. And in my opinion, and there's a number of reasons for it, but the physical market, I think, and I've been talking about this to my people for some time now, is drying up on this gold cartel, as I call them. And so the buyers know what these guys are going to do and attack, and they're waiting for them. And it's quite a battle right now. I call it a battle royale, and obviously I'm hoping it's going to play out, for our team. But to me, it's all up to the physical market. It's got to clean these people out. That's just Chris Powell, my colleague, talks about, just like back when the French were buying up all their gold, and gold was traded freely, and it dried up, and they couldn't hold the price down anymore.
Right, and just like then, the only way that they could, I guess it was 68 or 69. The only way that they could make a change was to disrupt the physical market, and that was the what broke the camel's back, if you will. And do you see I think the mark that we're looking for in silver is like 2025, and I think that we're going to. I don't think we're going to hit that this year, but I think that we have the potential to hit it in the very early stages of 2020, especially if the strength that you've just described and what we've been seeing over the past week in particular, if that strength holds through or holds, do you think that I'm off base in thinking that, or because I have very high expectations for silver for 2020, very high.
Well, I'm with you. And for me, it's always been 21's the magic number for me.
21,
And when
okay.
it gets above that, it can do anything. I mean, I'm a big believer in Newton's law of equal and opposite reactions.
Yes.
And this silver's been the worst acting market I've ever seen in 45 years.
Wow.
I've never seen a market act so bad for so long. So, in my opinion, it's been artificially suppressed by J.P. Morgan. Speaking of J.P. Morgan, and when it takes off now, it's just going to explode. And we'll see if I'm right, but that's my opinion. Once, because it's just been kept 200 price for too long. I mean, compared to any other asset you can think of.
Right.
Gold is, you know, about for silver to be equal to gold, where gold at the moment it should be about 26. That would be about equal to, but about it right now it should be 26.
Yes.
So it's got a long way to go, and I think that as gold takes off, and then all of a sudden silver's so cheap, industrial users that are so used to getting it and just not paying much attention to it, and they have to have it, and all of a sudden they're going to be concerned about supply, and it'll be kind of a panic to go after it because they have to have it.
Right.
It's not like gold. People are using silver for their products that need it. So I think that's coming.
Now, and speaking of supply, you are at the New Orleans Investment Conference. You're surrounded by people that are either involved in the mining industry or that are paying very close attention to what's going on to the mining industry. What are you hearing in relation to that? I mean, as you well know, Steve St. Angelo over at the SRS Rocco Report does a great job of keeping up with what's going on with the mining industry. What are you hearing on the ground there at the conference? As far as the mining supplies and mining's being in trouble or getting the capital inflows that they need.
Well, there's different opinions, and I don't want to
Okay.
get into it too much, which I haven't had time to listen to some of the presentations to because I wouldn't want to misrepresent anything. But there's different views. I think silver's been so bad for so long. There's some people here they're just going to it's put them to sleep, and that's the major thing. And what I can say, what's very interesting to me, is trying to expose the manipulation for 2 decades along with Chris Powell, is that a lot of our critics say publicly they don't to people they don't want to talk about the manipulation anymore if they're going to be interviewed, or they've gone just silent. You don't hear the criticism that we used to get, and even at a conference like this, and that's a major change.
Yes,
and that's a good sign.
Well, they can't, because I mean there's too many incidences. I mean, we were in Canada last year, we're in Germany, and now this situation with J.P. Morgan. So, I mean, when you have, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 or a dozen or 2 dozen or 10 dozen situations, after a while, it's maybe there's something to it.
That's what's happened. And
Exactly.
I even think, even our old friend Dennis Gartman here, I think is not publicly, but I think he's kind of winking. He's giving us a nod. So,
well, you guys deserve a lot of respect, because you have done an unbelievable job, and as far as exposing this and staying on top of it. You said at the very top, you guys have dedicated your lives to bringing liberty, which gold and silver represent liberty, in my opinion. And you guys have done an unbelievable job of trying to bring liberty back into our lives. And I can't thank you enough for that. And these people that have been harping on you over the years, they have to be quiet. They have no choice at this point. They do.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, it's just the
Just
truth.
yeah, it is the truth.
Because I mean, it's no longer a situation where it's a maybe or perhaps, or you can't you can't get around it. It's just a fact at this point. It is manipulated, it is rigged, and LIBOR, Forex, and gold and silver, those three markets right there, or four markets, those alone control a lot of what happens on planet Earth as far as what people are able to do and not do, and movement, and just has a major impact on all of our lives. So thank you for what you're doing, Bill. I can't thank you enough. One last thing, and then I'll let you get back to the conference. And we talked about silver. Do you see the same thing with gold? Do you see gold moving in to higher ground?
Well, yeah, naturally, and there's so many reasons for it that a lot of the speakers here have been talking about. The low interest rates, the negative interest rates, the debt, the budget deficits, and obvious stuff. Trying to get other economies going, and gold is already at all-time highs in 73 other currencies. I mean,
Yep.
it's only the one gold, and I think the other one is Switzerland's lag, but gold's the big laggard. And of course, that's what the gold cartel cares about is the U.S. dollar gold price. That's the one
Right.
that's key. And I think once you take out the all-time highs in gold, you're naturally going to see a surge. And of interest, that the gold and silver markets are pretty dead in the United States still. There's not a whole lot of interest. I mean, it's not like there's big buying yet.
No.
The big money's buying. Guys like Ray Dalio, who I used to know very well a long time ago. He's been a big advocate out there. The big money's coming in. They see what's coming. But the average person isn't there yet. And when that happens, watch out. And that's when the supply really, just completely disappears.
Exactly. And I think that what's happening once again with the supply, I think that the mines are, and I was talking to Nick Hodge was there at the conference, and I was talking to Chris a couple of days ago, and got to ask him about the mergers, and he agrees with what I had said, which I was grateful that to hear his thoughts on it. I mean, once you start seeing these mergers at the top with these big bull with the majors, when they start merging, we have a serious problem because they're eating their own. They have to have supply. Somebody has to have
Yes.
supply in order to satisfy their stockholders, their board of directors, and all of that. So the only thing and there's no new mines coming online. So the supply's got to come from somewhere.
It's amazing, isn't it? We
Right.
haven't had this major discovery in eons, and
Eons.
I think at some point exactly what you're talking about. The juniors, a lot of them have been really lagging in exploration stocks, and I think once you get into this new high ground territory and there's a scramble for supply, they're going to be bid up rapidly.
Yes, I agree completely because they're and then
That's
when I
where
was
you go.
yeah, and I was talking to Nick, and it's like, okay, if you've got a 5 to 8 million ounce, if your 43-101 is showing that you've got 5 to 8 million ounces, that's a strong mine, and somebody's going to buy that, and they're gonna have to pay for it because they know
That's right.
that these guys they're desperate at this point. They have nothing. And if you're a gold mine, you have to have something. So
You got it.
that's it. Well, Bill, I certainly appreciate all your time. And is there anything you want to leave the audience with this afternoon?
No, I just want to thank you very much, and I think that we're going to have a lot of smiles over the next year, like you said, and I think for those people paying close attention, it's all going to pay off. I mean, these past years, the stock market and the cryptos and art and real estate have all done well. I mean, the stock market today and all-time highs across the board. Our time's coming, and it's because this gold cartel of the bad guys is just going to lose control, and it's going to be spectacular when it takes off.
I couldn't agree more. And once again, you can find all of Bill's great work over at La Metropole Cafe. Link will be in the description box below. And he is founding member, and you're the president, right, of GATA?
Well, Chris and I run it together. He
Yeah.
does all the work, and I just I get the recognition. He does the work.
You're just a pretty face for the organization.
I wouldn't say a pretty face, but Chris does all the work. I can tell you that.
He does a marvelous job. And Bill, I certainly appreciate it. And have a good time at the conference. And I will talk with you soon.
Okay, Roy. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.